So, what do you think causes the most pain in your life? I mean, is it, sitting in bumper-to-bumper traffic or maybe a toxic dynamic with your boss?
Or perhaps it's just that vague sort of low-level existential dread that creeps in right before you fall asleep.
Right, yeah,
Well, so-
exactly. Well, welcome to today's deep dive. We're going to be exploring a pretty fascinating and honestly uncompromising text from 2010. It's by a philosopher named Sufeng, and it's titled The 18 Source Causes of Life's Pain.
And it is definitely uncompromising. The core argument here is that life inherently should be joyful, free, and blessed.
Yeah, which sounds great.
It does. But the author argues that instead of that freedom, most people are just trapped in this endless cycle of day and night suffering.
And that's our mission for this deep dive. We want to unpack these 18 specific pitfalls, give you a sort of mirror for your own life so you can identify which of these root causes might be just quietly operating in the background of your daily routine.
Because we often just treat the symptoms right. We try to get a better job or, find a new partner, but we ignore the foundational source code that's actually generating the misery.
Right. And I have to say, I am so excited about the sheer scope of this text. I mean, it covers everything from everyday laziness at work to multiple dimensions of the entire universe.
It zooms in and out dramatically, and it actually starts with what the author calls the GPS of life.
The GPS of life.
Yeah, right. The text argues that the very first foundational cause of pain is simply having the wrong values regarding life and the universe. If your internal GPS is wrong, you basically slide straight toward a hell of anxiety.
If it's right, you head toward a heaven of freedom.
Exactly. A broken worldview is sort of the engine for all the subsequent suffering on the list.
So what does a broken GPS actually look like in this context? Because, the text criticizes these really common cynical sayings, stuff like people die for money and birds die for food.
Or the belief that when people die, they just go out like the light of candles.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, I've always kind of thought of those sayings as just, grounded realism. Like you live, you hustle, you die, and it's over.
Sure, a lot of people see it that way. But the author argues that this perspective completely ignores concepts like karma and reincarnation.
Right.
If you adopt that strictly materialist view, the text says you're left bumbling around like headless flies. You have no broader context. You're just reacting to whatever physical thing is right in front of you.
Which brings in that massive cosmic scale the author introduces. It asserts the existence of the greatest creator and talks about 20 parallel worlds and even 36-dimensional spaces.
It's a huge shift in scale.
It is. And when I first read that, I was like, wait, are we talking about astrophysics now? But it's really more of a philosophical framework. It's like trying to navigate a sprawling, multidimensional chess game while firmly believing you're only playing tic-tac-toe.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Things.
Ah.
I mean, we can be constantly frustrated, right?
Mhm.
Because the pieces just aren't moving the way your tiny little rule book says they should.
Exactly. And that's why this matters so much for the listener. If you believe this one short physical life is the absolute sum of existence, then ignoring this grand scale traps you in a really narrow, painful viewpoint.
Because every little thing feels huge.
Right. Without a broader cosmic context, every minor setback, a dent in your car, a bad day at work, it all feels like the end of the world. It's a massive source of unnecessary suffering because your universe is just too small to absorb the hit.
So if we transition from that massive cosmic scale down to our physical bodies,
Mm-hmm.
how does that broken worldview actually show up in our daily behavior?
Well, according to the text, it manifests as this intense hyperfixation on the ego.
The ego trap.
Yes. The author outlines several interconnected causes of pain here. Things like selfishness, greed, comparison, competitiveness, and laziness.
Let's talk about the greed aspect, because there is this really beautiful metaphor in the text. It advises us to only take one cup of water among thousands of rivers and lakes.
Which is so striking.
It is.
Yeah.
The pain basically comes from wanting to possess the entire river.
Right. And wanting the whole river isn't just a moral issue, it's a logistical nightmare for your brain.
Oh, totally.
If you can't be satisfied with the cup you actually need today, you start agonizing over how to dam up the river, how to store the water, how to guard it from everyone else.
You're just manufacturing vulnerability.
Exactly. And that vulnerability naturally breeds comparison, which the text is surprisingly harsh about. It actually calls the consciousness of comparison evil.
Wow, evil.
Yeah. It states that wanting to suppress others or aggressively chasing fame in a life that's as brief as, and I love this phrase, the illusion of a flower blossom that guarantees suffering.
Okay, I have to playfully push back on this a little.
Go for it.
Wait, isn't a little competitiveness what drives, human progress? Like if nobody wanted to be faster or innovate, we wouldn't have modern medicine or technology. How do we balance ambition with this warning?
It's a really valid question. I think the way the text views it, the problem isn't the work itself, it's the chasing of fame and superiority.
Mhm.
When your drive is fueled purely by the need to have a bigger flower blossom than the person next to you, you rob yourself of the independent joy of simply existing and creating.
So it's about external validation versus internal satisfaction.
Precisely. The moment you constantly compare, your happiness relies on someone else being perceived as lesser. That's a trap.
Okay, that makes sense. But then on the flip side of that hyper-competitive ego, the text also targets laziness.
It does.
It says that stealing achievements and preferring leisure leads straight to poverty and pain. But I have to bring up this hilarious, super specific exception the author provides.
Oh, the pig exception.
Yes. The text literally says laziness leads to pain, quote, unless you can become a pig.
It's such a funny line, but it has a deep philosophical point. A pig, or just any purely unreflective creature, is perfectly content just consuming and sleeping. It doesn't have the capacity for self-actualization.
Right, but a human does. So if you as a human try to just lay around and act like the pig, you can't actually pull it off. You end up with this terrible cognitive dissonance because you're actively ignoring your potential.
Exactly. Stagnation goes against human nature, so you
Yeah.
generate internal friction, which is pain.
Yeah. So, okay, if chasing material success and feeding the ego causes pain, what about our personal relationships? Because here's where the text takes a really unexpected and honestly a highly controversial turn.
It really does. It completely challenges how we view romantic connections.
Yeah, let's unpack this concept of poisoned love and the trap of possession, because the text explicitly lists marital love, faithful love, pledge of eternal love as poisonous.
It puts them right in the category of things that generate misery.
Okay, wait, let's just stop there for a second. We are raised on rom-coms and fairy tales that tell us faithful, eternal love is the ultimate human goal. And this text is just flat out saying that very goal is toxic.
Well, the expert analysis here requires us to look at it objectively. The author isn't necessarily anti-romance. What they are pointing out is the danger of treating humans as possessions.
Ah, ownership.
Yes. The text argues that once you own something or someone, you have to spend an immense amount of heart and energy just to maintain that ownership.
Because people change.
Exactly. And when you demand that they don't change or that they remain exclusively yours forever, it leads to jealousy, cheating, fighting, intriguing, and even what the text calls life and death struggles just to keep them.
Just to enforce the contract, basically.
Right. And it goes further. It says that relying on others, like putting your spiritual props on someone else for your food, your shelter, or your emotional support, that turns you into a suffering slave or puppet.
A puppet. Wow. I mean, if your entire foundation for happiness depends completely on another person acting a very specific way, you really aren't free anymore, are you?
You're completely tethered to their ego and their choices. And the text points out another massive source of pain in relationships, attempting to change or control others to fit your preferences.
Because, as the text says, nature is hard to change.
Exactly. It's a losing battle.
You're basically banging your head against a wall. The pain isn't necessarily the other person's fault. The pain is you refusing to just accept reality.
That's a perfect way to summarize it.
So we've looked at the cosmos, we've looked at the ego, and we've covered romantic relationships. Let's kind of zoom out to how we interact with society and nature itself, because I noticed this really fascinating tension in the text between obeying the rules and completely rejecting institutions.
Yes, it's a very delicate balance it prescribes. Let's start with nature. The text says that suppressing natural instincts and love just to gain supernatural powers is foolish.
Right, it compares it to hurling eggs against stones.
You are the egg in that scenario. You will break if you fight nature.
Fair enough. But then it gets into human law, which is where it gets really interesting. It says you absolutely must obey government laws and constitutions.
Emphatically, yes.
It says even if a country disappears, governments and rules are needed for harmony. Breaking the law basically guarantees a painful life.
Because you're just inviting chaos and friction into your day-to-day existence.
Okay, but here comes cause 18, the ultimate surrender. The text claims that entering into the programs or consciousnesses of marriage, family, nation, political parties, religions, and organizations will definitely cause a lifetime of suffering.
It's the grand finale of the 18 causes.
So wait, let me highlight this apparent paradox. I have to strictly follow the laws of the nation, but at the exact same time, I have to completely abandon the idea of a nation, or a religion, or a family.
It sounds contradictory, but it synthesizes beautifully when you break it down. It's all about physical compliance for the sake of peace versus mental liberation.
Okay, walk me through that.
Think about stopping at a red light. You stop your car at a red light because it makes sense for societal harmony, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to crash.
Right, physical compliance.
Yes, but you don't tie your soul's identity to the traffic light.
Right.
You don't worship the Department of Transportation. So the text is saying, yes, obey the laws of the nation so you don't go to jail and suffer. But the moment you internalize the consciousness of a political party or a nation, when you tie your spiritual identity to a flag or an organization, you absorb all of their historical grievances and anxieties.
Wow. Yeah, if my identity is entirely fused with a political party, then someone criticizing that party feels like they are physically attacking me.
Exactly. You've expanded your ego to the size of an institution, which gives the world a massive target to inflict pain upon you.
So you operate within the structures to keep the peace, but you refuse to let those structures define who you actually are.
Precisely. Mental non-attachment keeps you out of hell, while physical compliance keeps you out of prison.
That's incredibly profound, and it really brings everything full circle back to the listener.
It does.
Because these 18 causes of pain, they essentially boil down to a massive mismatch. It's a mismatch between how we think the universe works and how it actually works.
We want the universe to cater to our ego.
Right. Whether it's, wanting the whole river instead of just being grateful for one cup, or expecting these eternal pledges of possession in our relationships, or treating our short flower blossom lives as a battleground for fame and superiority.
We truly are the architects of our own misery.
We really are. So, for everyone listening, I want to ask you to do a quick mental audit of your day based on these sources we've discussed. Just think about your routine. Are you quietly trying to control someone else's nature right now?
Are you relying entirely on an institution or a title for your identity?
Yeah. Are you looking at someone else's cup of water and feeling that sting of comparison? Just notice where the GPS might be pointing you toward anxiety.
Awareness is always the first step to reprogramming it.
Absolutely. And to wrap up, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final kind of lingering provocative thought. Something to just mull over that builds on this text.
I'm curious where you're going with this.
Well, the author paints a very clear picture, right? Avoiding pain requires us to shed our attachments. Attachments to family, to marriage, to nations, to eternal love. But does that really lead to a life of ultimate joyous freedom, as the author suggests?
That's the big question.
Right. Or does shedding all of those messy, complicated human connections leave us completely isolated? Like, is a totally pain-free, detached life actually what it means to be fully human? Or is a little bit of that friction, that pain of loving and losing the necessary price of admission for the human experience?
That is something to seriously think about.
Something to ponder the next time you're stuck in traffic. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.